Hey everyone, Pet Party here today. We're going to be going over a topic we've discussed before, but is increasingly relevant now, especially given all the hype Masterflex 4000 pricing in the last few weeks and months. So that topic is about the fact that time is very, very relative when it comes to cardboard and cardboard stonks. Um, Things that you may have thought were extraordinarily overpriced a few weeks, few months, we're not even talking a few years ago, um, in hindsight seem very cheap. And a lot of the times, things like that seem extremely obvious to you in the present day when we look at things like, PSA 10 Blue Eyes White Dragons. About not even 3 years ago, that card was a $2,000 card. Now you're pushing five figures. And a lot of people now, either who are in the hobby now or who were in the hobby back then and looking back on it, say, well, it's only natural that Blue Eyes would be jumping to such extraordinary heights in price, especially when you compare it to things like Charizard. Well, Charizard was stuck at, the $40,000 range for years before finally uptick this past year. And people at that point in time thought, it was a dead investment. It wasn't really going to be going up a whole lot. You weren't going to see these giant leaps and bounds a lot of the other Pokemon cards we're seeing. And although it was considered, one of the holy grails, quote unquote, a lot of people didn't really think it was going to be jumping anywhere near as much or as fast as it has in the last year. But when people in the today look at it and say, oh, well, Charizard jumped in the last year alone, $300,000, it jumps, 6 times multiplier in value. Blue Eyes has jumped, 10, 40 times in value in the last 2 years. People look at these things and they think that, it's an assured return on investment or, an assured jump in value that these items are going to keep appreciating at the rate that they're appreciating. And, it's a foregone conclusion that things like that were going to be happening. But what you really need to take into account and take note of, that in the time when these prices were, like I said, a few years ago, not even 3 years ago, Blue Eyes is $2,000. Charizard forever was stuck at $40,000. There was multiple PSA 10 copies up for sale for between 40 and 50,000, and there was that one completely shit-hauled copy that was about 30,000, 32,000, whatever the guy over in Europe wanted. And they weren't selling. So it's easy for people in the now to look back and say, oh, well, you're an idiot if you didn't buy Charizard when it was at $40,000. Well, Charizard was stuck at $40,000 forever. And Blue Eyes, people really didn't think would be jumping not only as high as it has, but as fast as it has for the most part. I remember in one of the group chats about a year and a half ago, I said Blue Eyes by the end of this year was going to be $50,000, and everyone laughed at me and told me I was an idiot and didn't know what I was talking about. Well, already there. So you can say what you want about, people back in the day having all this opportunity to buy up things like this. But a lot of people really didn't have, what's a politically correct word of saying this? People really didn't have the stomach, we'll call it, for putting this type of money and these types of investments into cardboard. You look at things like Cyberstein. Cyberstein was criminally undervalued for the last few years. You could always find, either PSA 10 or Beckett, 9.5 copies up for sale for between $2,000 and $3,000. I remember a Beckett 10 copy selling for like 22 or 2400. I think it was on Probstein a couple years ago. And those cards sat at those prices forever. So after a year, year and a half, 2 years of stagnant growth, if you looked at someone and said, hey, I think this card is going to be, a $20,000, $30,000 card in the next 2 years, they would have looked at you, laughed, and called you a dumbass. So you really need to keep things like that into consideration. When you look at even this past summer when Sassy Autos ungraded Cyberstein hit $10,000, everyone automatically assumed that it was shill bid to hell. No way anyone's stupid enough to pay that price on a raw card when a 9.5 didn't even hit 8,000 month and a half ago. And a lot of people get caught up in these particular things and how, the market traditionally works. So, like I said, Blue Eye, Cyberstein are great examples. Charizard's a great example. But when you look at even these normal, quote-unquote, cards, we'll say like Gaia the Dragon Champion. I sold a Gaia the Dragon Champion, it was at 9.5, I think, for about 1,200 US. That was, 2 years ago now. At that point in time, that was a fantastic price for that card. That card really hasn't exploded in value except for the last 6 months. So if I'd have sold that card last year, I probably would have gotten about the same amount of money for the same card. When you look at Gaia the Fierce Knight, a year ago, almost exactly actually, I sold a PSA 10 copy of that card for $750, which was market at the time. And because the individual was buying a bunch of other things off of me, I thought, it was a good price for me to be selling because it was market. I'll just pick up another copy for about the same price in a couple months down the line. And every goddamn copy I've seen up for sale since has gone for multiple times what I sold that copy for and what other people are willing to pay or what other people are willing to sell. So it gets extremely, I'll say, aggravating, for lack of a better word, when you get into things like that. And a lot of the times you need to be, cognizant of the fact that a lot of these super high-end cards are held in the hands of collectors. So you can ridicule the price of what someone wants for a card all you want, but at the end of the day, especially if you're a collector, would you sell the card that you want at the price you're asking if you already owned it? Or, if it's a card you already own and you're making fun of the price that someone's trying to get for their copy, would you sell your copy for that price? If the answer is no, then chances are the card's going to probably keep going up in price. And that's what a lot of people don't seem to realize in not only like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, but in the collectible investment class, quote unquote, as a whole. And as a lot more of these, premier collection pieces or investment pieces or, whatever you're trying to get your hands on these cardboard for, as more of this stuff gets in the hands of long-term holders, whether it's your pack rat like me who doesn't sell any LOB hollows at this point at all anymore since that debacle with the Gaia, or you're someone who just wants to try and get a registry set for LOB, or just someone who, say, liked Celtic Guardian. That was their favorite card growing up as a kid. When you get your hands on that card, a lot of the times you've been trying to get that card so long, you don't even want to hear anyone's potential offer for it. And in the case where it's just a one-off or, you're only looking for 2 or 3 specific cards for your collection, you might not even be up on the market. You might not even be keeping up on the prices of your Celtic Guardian or your Gaia the Fierce Knight, or your Exodia heads or anything like that. So you might not even care that the price is doubled, tripled, quadrupled in the last year. So as more of these copies go into the hands of these long-term holds, we'll call it, 5 years plus, where either people have them in their collections, they're never going to sell, or you have these long-term investors moving in who really hold on to things for years before they try to get a good return on their initial investment. As more of these cards leave the market, it's going to put more pressure on the pricing of a lot of these items, and it's just going to keep driving them up. So back to what we started with, what may seem like a stupid price today, and no idiots can pay anything like that, in a few weeks, few months, a couple years from now, that's going to seem like a pittance on a lot of these high-end or harder to track down cards. And people really need to come to terms with the fact that that's going to keep continuing to happen. And if you get stuck in that mindset of, oh, well, this card a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago was X price, I'm not paying Y price, then unfortunately you're not going to be able to track down or acquire a lot of these cards, because people simply aren't going to be willing to sell them for what they were, a few weeks, few months, or a few years ago. So just a thought piece for people to keep in the back of their mind if they're trying to track down stuff. Generally, this time of year is the best time of year for trying to acquire pieces for your collection. People are always trying to pay off their Christmas bills from the holiday season. So generally, a lot of stuff tends to get shaken out of the woodwork. People are generally willing to accept a little bit lower prices on a lot of stuff. That's the general trend. Whether or not that happens with your super high-end stuff or your, like I said, hard to acquire items like your PSA 10 LOB cards, probably not going to be the same story this year. But the worst you can do is try to track down some stuff. So just wanted to say hi to all the new people who've joined the channel over the last couple of weeks. Whether you're here because of the LOB box opening or the Steve Aoki sale, I'm going to be trying to make at least semi-regular videos like this for the foreseeable future. Super bogged down with work, but I'm going to try my best to make the channel a bit of a priority. If you've been here for a while, thanks for sticking around, and hope you learned something today, and have a good one.